Have a discussion point. Daniella didn't have a skiing accident here in Davos, but it was a climate accident at COP28, so it's not as exciting. I thought she was doing downhill skiing before she got here. No black diamonds. It's great to be here at AI House. I want to thank our conveners, M42 and Med42, for putting such a terrific session together. You have all the names, so I don't need to go through it, so we won't waste time on that. But what a mixed, diverse group to address one of the key issues of today on artificial intelligence. This is my 33rd time at Davos, so I know the promenade well, and I can always kind of gauge the priorities of a Davos theme when you see the architecture and the branding on the promenade. So we had some AI indications last year, but everybody's gone all in on AI if they don't have a real core business model. Healthcare is one where AI can make a profound difference. We've had some calls leading up to this session today, and it's phenomenal what sort of disruption it provides, but most importantly, how it supports a healthcare system, and finally, how it impacts the consumer, the patient, with the potential. Now, we're coming out of a COVID crisis where the globe spent about $3 trillion on fighting the pandemic. Prior to that, we had a financial crisis, so government healthcare systems are under strain. We also need to have governments undertake energy transition with the support of the private sector. In fact, I came out of a energy transition discussion this morning, and they say the same thing. We know what the roadmap looks like, but we need to be able to finance that roadmap. So you don't want a case where you have the developed countries that have wealth or a UAE that's deployed AI at a very early stage, leaping ahead of everybody else, and then you have an unjust transition to AI in healthcare as well. First, let's give a nice round of applause to our group here, and it's nice to have them assembled. We're going to go for 2 rounds of questions. They're going to keep their interventions very direct, and then we want to definitely invite questions from the floor. Is that a chat box that we hand around with a microphone? What a great invention. I've seen it before, but it's very effective. As long as you don't throw it at each other or throw it at one of the panelists, I think we'll be absolutely okay. Should we start with you, Ellen, at the far end here, and how you potentially see the opportunity and practically the deployment from the standpoint of Microsoft, because you're deploying this already in certain markets. And my point in my opening comments is you don't want an uneven distribution of this. Where can it make the biggest difference in your view? And welcome.
Yes, thank you, and good to see everyone. It's interesting because just the last year has been the shift from the opportunity and the art of the possible of Gen AI to Gen AI application in 1 year, unprecedented. So healthcare is the place in which the coming together of Gen AI computing capabilities can really make a difference both to the delivery of healthcare, really the experience of the clinician. Think about the shortage that we have for clinical personnel. 13 million estimates of WHO. So we need to close that gap and help them save time, keep the quality, and make the experience in their daily life and in the life of the patient better. So we launched together with Nuance and in collaboration with Epic as a system of record in healthcare, ambient clinical intelligence capability that transform the patient-to-doctor interaction. So you don't have to have the doctor turned around and, be busy at the keyword, but simply with consent, ingest voice data, structure it, and then bring it into the MR with the clinician in control. 40 minutes per day saved of what the doctors call pajama time, meaning the time at the end of the day where they need to record what they do. Multiply that by the number of doctors, see the saving in time. I can tell you more later on the drug discovery side, because this goes from delivery to discovery of new therapeutics. And in all of that, we see not the art of the possible, but the impact today.
Okay, very good. Thanks for being so direct, Elena. Daniella, do you want to get into the the concept of precision medicine, and I wanted to explore some of the barriers that exist to deploy from your standpoint, from Bayer, and also you're a policy person, you're based in Washington, so you can see the debate on such a large healthcare system. As I was noting, healthcare systems are under strain right now, and so it's the have and the have-nots, the public health system, and then the quite expensive private healthcare that you have in the United States. How would you see the barriers here to get that precision and also that user experience for the patient themselves? I get quite surprised. You go to a doctor's office, and as you were suggesting, Elena, the first 10 minutes is writing on a pad, and I always wonder who translates this into the computer. We need to cut the time, but also know the patient much better. Thanks.
So maybe I'll start with telling you, what I'm excited about, and then I'll kind of tell you what I think the barriers are. So when I look at precision medicine, what am I excited about? I'm actually excited about what we can bring to the consumer quickly. So if I think about diagnostics, if I think about wearables, things that are already sort of socially permissible, if you will, that we're already using, when you start to look at the connection of that to AI, I think we can get to that pretty quickly. I think even just about a partner we work with, Ada, which is doing your kind of AI diagnostics and symptoms checkers. Imagine like Dr. Google, but on steroids. That is one thing that I'm seeing accelerate. I even personally use it. So I see a lot of potential there. That's one part of the continuum. If I start to go on to the deep end of the precision medicine continuum, we get into things like, for example, we're partnering with Google on quantum chemistry for new drug discovery. So there is a whole continuum of what you can do on precision medicine that I am incredibly excited about. Now, what are the barriers, and what does this look like also in terms of how we accelerate? I think there are two key things to keep in mind. One is social permissibility. There is still quite a bit of skepticism around AI. I think we need to be eyes wide open to that. And there's definitely skepticism around AI when it comes to your health, your personal health data and information. Some of the stats out there are quite striking. So this is one area that I think we have to pay attention to. And if I think about what we're talking about here in Davos, we were reflecting, we're going to go through a tremendous amount of geopolitical change in the next year as potentially 50% of the world goes to vote. And so when we talk about this AI transformation, we've got to think about what do you do with the people who are at risk of being left behind. So I think this piece around accessible AI, as we design for AI, as we design these innovative breakthroughs, how do you do that with access in mind? And with scalability, not just for your kind of rich and developed market. So I think that's one key thing. The second thing is infrastructure. So you could have the best innovation, you could have the most exciting leapfrog, but if you're not bringing it into the existing infrastructure and ecosystem, it's not going to really scale. And so that, I think, is one of the big, watch-outs that we have to solve for in AI. And what do I mean in the context of the healthcare system? In the context of the healthcare system, we currently today have a system that is based on sick care. We need to transition to a system that is based on well care. And this is also where I think AI has tremendous potential to help us do that. It will save healthcare systems money. But also, this is one of the linchpins. If we look at our existing system today, you've got patients, you've got providers, you've got payers, you've got large pharma companies. All of this exists in an ecosystem. AI's got to plug into that. And I wouldn't underestimate the challenge that will be.
Okay, thanks very much. Excellent points brought up. It's almost, I'd love to circle back on the second round on trust, because you have to have people buy into the idea that my data's out there for a reason, and this is a primary reason, right? Because it affects quality of life. So let's put that in your mind, and I'll come back to it. So thanks very much for that on the interventions. In my NYU course in Abu Dhabi, I had great collaboration with G42 and M42. So I've watched the development of the healthcare system. And one thing that they do in the UAE very quickly is they adapt to new technologies. and they have a small population, so it's a very good test case example, Ashish, I think is a good way to put it. The large language models that you've been able to pull in that sort of population, what is it showing us early stages and the ability to impact a healthcare system which is very robust already? Thanks.
Thank you, John, and good morning. And it's a privilege to be part of this panel here. So just before I answer that question, some context on M42 so that the answer makes a little bit of sense. So M42 is an organization which is an integrated health tech system. So we run hospitals. So we have doctors, physicians, nurses. We run Cleveland Clinic, Abu Dhabi, Imperial College London. And we have a digital health arm, which has AI scientists, DevOps, cloud engineers, all working under one roof. Plus, to what Danielle said, we have a CRO that runs clinical trials. So it's one ecosystem that allows this sort of inclusion, and not just a tech firm bringing out cutting-edge Gen AI. It's sort of inclusive. And so the large language model, to answer your question, it's called Med42, and it's just to answer Danielle's point on accessibility, we've purposely made sure it's open source, it's accessible, it's downloadable on Hugging Face right now. And how it helps us is some of those key points which Elena had mentioned. We run hospitals. We see the pain the doctors go through in terms of that pajama time, the 40% of the time on the notes, and they have to backtrack and write the right notes. So just on the clinical decision support, you have a patient walking in right now. We have the model actually filtering through the entire patient history to come up with the possible outcomes, but eventually the decision is with the doctor. So it's not a hunch anymore. It's a more informed decision. So that's one area where Med42 is plugged into our hospital networks. And I think you and I just touched before this, just from a patient engagement perspective, you would assume that since we run these large hospitals, you have access to these doctors. No. So you have a rash, you want to have a question, and you have right information at your fingertips to figure out what could be the possible outcomes or the treatment plan, so that when you have that 2 seconds with the doctor, it's an informed discussion rather than, let's just go through a lot of blood tests and that patient personalized medicine engagement. I think it has a huge role to play. So that's the two areas that we are focused on the Med42. One is clinical decision support, and second from a patient engagement, and third from a personalized medicine. But considering the ecosystem that we run currently in M42, and together with our partners with Microsoft, we have a large volume of data, which is essential to ensure that any model churns out right information. It cannot be just on your phenotypical information that's being churned out from your electronic health records. It has to have genomics, it has to have proteomics, it has to have imaging. How do you plug all these data sets and ensure it's a right representation of the globe to give the right answer so it can be adopted very well? So I think that sort of answers, I hope.
No, it certainly does. The only thing, just do a quick follow-up. How does it inform the patient? Do you think you'll be a more educated patient as they can adapt to these new systems and the information they're going to be getting on the interface? Tell us.
I can give you an example right now. So we run genomics. So the genomics report that was sent to me is a 263-page report. I'm not a clinical geneticist, but clearly I can just say, give me a summary as a 13-year-old and the key areas that I need to have an informed discussion in that doctor follow-up. So heads up, I know. Second, what are my pharmacogenomics risks? Can I have my statins, or can I have that? Is this going to impact based on my genomic profile? So this is sort of a patient education and awareness discussion, which now it's at your fingertips through the advancements of Gen AI. And the reason why it's successful, at least to us, is because we have this ecosystem. It's together with the governments, together with the policymakers, together the doctors, physicians, and the AI scientists to build this collectively.
Good. Thanks for taking the follow-up. Evelyn, it's great to have you because your whole baseline work as a professor based in Shanghai and also Tel Aviv, which is a really good juxtaposition from a very populated country to one that's small but very innovative country right now. What do you think are the opportunities and the barriers in your view from as you see it? And I also want to talk to you, as I noted, the AI development in China and whether they're really embracing this in the healthcare sector as a priority. Thanks.
Right. First of all, thank you so much for having me. Great honor and pleasure. And I can just resonate with everything that was already said. As a physician, I think generative AI is really enabling us to be more precise, to be more with the patient. So although it's extremely high tech, it's allowing us to be very much high touch because we spend less time with the computer and because we can outsource to the AI something that we usually would have to spend too much time on, and our focus is not there, meaning rational clinical diagnostics. AI can help us with that very, very much. And there are good studies on it showing that, in the emergency room in the night, you are not capable of being accountable as much as you could on daytime, and it's chronic. So people are leaving healthcare. There is a lack of physicians, mostly because of that. And another thing is that generative AI, and not only generative AI, so over past years, I've been in China on and off for 15 years. And one of the reasons why I'm there is because AI really has a direct entrance into the healthcare. So we had telemedicine like 20 years ago and virtual labs for anatomy 15 years ago. And now we have systems that are built on the so-called idea of smart hospitals, where we have data fueled in for very large populations, allowing exchanges with hospitals, which have turnover of 50, 100 million people a year in the emergency room only. So we need those large data processing platforms, and we have them, and it's allowing us to not only do better diagnostics, but also to have the opportunity to learn from that data and develop new tools such as biological aging clocks for healthy and for sick people. It's allowing us to yield better outputs in things that are sometimes that are gaining now more representation, meaning fertility treatments, for example. And also in terms of robotics, AI plays a very important role for us, even to optimize our ways to gain biopsies. We were able to prolong the survival of people with pancreatic patients only through the fact that the gamma knife or the precision robotic tools that we have to get biopsy from pancreas improved with AI because the needle is guided. So all those things are directly translated into our clinical physical work. And on top of that, we are very close to AI drug discovery. Close meaning we collaborate with the labs. There's AI robotic labs all around where we can just send a sample, and at least what we can do right now, we can identify the right precision drug, so repurpose the existing drugs for a specific patient, often in a situation where it's already futile in terms of clinical, we don't know. And of course, to find new targets. And the interesting thing is that China is also, again, not only China, but I'm just giving an example. I work in different countries, and I think healthcare is really moving towards trying to focus on the workforce population, so people really between 20 to 50, 60, because in very few years we'll have over 2 billion people aged over 60. So we need to make sure that they are healthy as long as possible, but at the same time, we really know that we need to start early. And they are already on all the trackers, and they are usually screened by omics, and it's tremendously helpful. But we also need to engage them more and give them the capabilities to have some sort of pharmacotherapies to delay their processes of degenerative aging. And so that's yet another focus to move from sick care to healthcare or welfare. In fact, we are trying to close the gap between the lifespan that is expanding and extending very quickly and the health span that didn't move for the last 10 years. So that's...
Good, excellent. I wanted to look at patient outcomes and whether you can build that trust in the system for people to embrace what's there. Elena, do you want to also give a sense from your vantage point? I think it's great for the panel to embrace this question as well. Can you give a sense of timelines when this audience can actually see the impact of AI in the systems that they live in today? Thanks.
Yes. Let's go to Madrid together. And let's imagine that we are a primary care doctor, and we try to understand if the symptoms that we are looking at could present a likelihood of rare condition, but it's not our specialization. There is an application that we supported working with the authorities for the primary care doctor to be helped looking at the symptoms, understand the likelihood of rare condition in the patient, also in pediatric patients, and then suggesting what type of additional tests should be done, what type of specialist could be seen within the health system. You bring at the fingertips of a patient, reducing the time of the odyssey for rare disease identification. That is huge in terms of human experience, of course, but productivity of the system, of the entire family, of the patient, just not knowing, going to yet another doctor and that another doctor and that another doctor. So that's, a clear example. The answer to your question is right now. The ability to scan through millions of past clinical trials and optimize the design of a clinical trial within a pharma company is available now. Content summarization and scanning for literature in the context of biomedical, in the context of healthcare, is a core capability from a Gen AI standpoint. We have worked with a biopharma organization, and in the first 70 days of use of the Gen AI solution, which is deep search, they saved 150,000 hours of their researchers. So this is real right now. And what is interesting is that, back to the point of trust, there is trust in terms of what is developed responsibly, what is really traceable, transparent, secure, private. So those values need to be respected. It needs to be very clear how they are embedded in the life cycle of the solutions. But there is also an element of trust by ease of use in the workflow that I'm used to do today, every day. If I have to make it more complex, going yet into another application that maybe is disjointed and so on, there is a breakdown in the clinical flow or the research flow and so on. And so we need to ask ourselves, what would a co-pilot, for example, for a doctor look like to augment its capability? What would a co-pilot for a researcher look like? And I use the word co-pilot because the human remains in the loop and in control, and that contributes to trust.
Okay, very good. Go ahead.
Can I just a follow up on what Elena said? I think it's essential that we understand this is now it's active right now. It's not like how we came in last year and AI was just a buzzword. It's immediately she mentioned Elena said come to Madrid. I said take a stopover in Abu Dhabi right now. We have sequenced 500,000 population there, and right now, all the 500,000, then they walk into any facility, irrespective of it's within an M42 network outside, the doctor has access to his pharmacogenomics panel. So that age where go try this, come back after 14 days, and then see if it worked or not, that's gone. So, and this is vast amount of data that's being filtered out and it's targeting personalized medicine. And second, I think it's essential what Elena said, it's that trust, and I think soon, Microsoft and M42 will be making some announcements on this trusted life science platform, which is accessible to patients, providers, policymakers, and that's essential to gain not just the tech awareness, but also how do you get the physicians on board? Again, I just want to reemphasize, since we run hospitals, just to educate them on AI, because of the lack of time, because they've got 15 people waiting, they have to see in 5 minutes. That awareness, I think it's a multifaceted approach to take it to
It's a very good point you're bringing up. Daniella, do you want to address the business case study, right? Because Bayer's the global leaders in pharma, and you're collaborating with medical groups at the same time, hospital systems that need to adapt. Is there the business model that works to justify the investment that is behind all this AI deployment? It sounds like it's going to be deployed faster for governments that have the budgets or private healthcare systems, perhaps. So I'd love to touch that. And then also this quality of life, because we're trying to tackle dementia and Alzheimer's disease. What sort of influence will the AI research have in terms of solving some of the biggest challenges of longevity, right, Eveline? You don't want people to grow old and have a really rotten life. You want to improve life. Go ahead.
Yeah, so maybe a couple thoughts on this. I think about this in terms of a continuum. So we've heard a lot about the current use cases, and if I kind of go back a year where we were here in Davos last year and where we are now, I do think there has been a tremendous acceleration in terms of like practically using AI. So, for example, clinical trials, yes, check, we're already doing that. It's saving a tremendous amount of time. That on through to, what is the role of diagnostics, checking on your biological aging. We're partnering with some startups on that, which is really cool, and we'll bring it into the hands of consumers much more quickly than I think we would have seen even 5 years ago. So that's really exciting. On through to the other end of the spectrum, which is kind of breakthrough new drug discovery, which is what I mentioned before, like what we're doing with Google on quantum chemistry, which I do think is the next big leap. When we talk about AI, one of the big gaps that you don't always hear a lot about is to really accelerate AI at scale, we also have to land quantum computing. Not going to get into that today, but that's one of the essential steps, and that part is coming. On the business use cases, what I think we see today AI can do is it gives us the magic of time. And you brought this up. It can save a tremendous amount of time. What I want to see is how do we go from saving time, which we can see today, to those true breakthroughs and leapfrogs, which is why I'm excited about quantum chemistry, new drug discovery, where that will take us. I think that's the next big leap. I don't think we're there yet. I think we're rapidly getting there, but I think that will take time. And then I do want to circle back on trust because, I want to kind of throw a little bit of a wrench in this here because I think it's important for us to be really honest about the state of trust in AI. So healthcare providers, 55% of them today still do not trust AI. It's just a reality. That's where we are. We've got to work on that. 1/3 of patients do not want to provide their data. So these are the things.
Did you say a third? Wow, sorry.
1 in 3. So these are the things, these are just kind of the reality of the state we're in. I think one of the essential things over the next 12 to 18 months is going to be tackling this trust deficit. Because if you don't have the social permissibility, like I said before, you can have the best tool, we can land quantum computing, but it's not going to matter. I do also think the health infrastructure piece is critical. I think we will do that in places like the UAE. The thing that keeps me up at night is how do you do that for last mile delivery? How do you do that for the places that don't even have health infrastructure? So these are the types of things we're also digging into. On one end, we're looking at what's the breakthrough, new drug discovery, how do we solve some of these big challenges around aging? And then there's the other end of the spectrum, which is how do you just expand access and what role does AI play in that? So just one quick example. We partner with a startup called Reach 52, and their whole mission is to reach the 52 million that don't have access. And they're working directly on last mile delivery in the most remote places. So how do you do online to offline with a back end of AI that's also connected with healthcare providers and in the system, so you can provide access to healthcare solutions where there is no access, but also power that on the back end with data, tools, AI, et cetera. So that's the kind of thing I find really exciting because we've got to go across the continuum.
Great.
If we leave half of the world behind, big problem.
No, but you said 52 million. You're just talking about in the States or in rural America that you mentioned.
Oh, sorry. No.
I mean, there's 7 billion people.
No,
There's only 52 million without access to healthcare.
No, 52%. Yeah.
52%.
Yeah, yes. Half of the
right.
world doesn't have access to basic and essential care.
Let me just go to Eveline, and then I'll come back to you, and then I'm going to open the floor up to questions. Sometimes we, in the kind of Davos culture, in these communities of events, we often talk about partnerships, and some are real and some are kind of, in theory, let's partner on this and make it happen. I'd love to get your viewpoint from a medical scientist, the link between the technologists, the people in the clinics, and the policymakers. So and you're in Washington, so you have to deal with this, and all four of you know that relationship to get the policy right. How do you accelerate these partnerships to make sure that we have the right policy, soft touch, if you will? Just watch your time in terms of your intervention, please. Thanks.
Sure. So first of all, I would like to maybe also circle back on that because it's coming over to how do we collaborate with other people. So I'm a clinician and I trust AI as a partner, as a co-pilot, as an optimization of my clinical work with patients. And I work both with patients who are at the end, so they are ICU patients, cancer patients, oncologists, and I'm also in the longevity or healthy longevity. So I really work with my patients to bring them from the okay, the normal, what we always hear, you are fine, you are healthy, to optimal, in order to make sure that their performance at the individual and social level is at their best. And AI is helping everywhere in all those points, and it's helping in a way that we have the in clinical, so we have the clinical trial simulations. It's saving us tremendous amount of time, but it's helping us on the small thing, which sound small but are huge. So Alzheimer's, okay, or any type of dementia. It takes so much of our time even to explain and to care for the patient. Right now, this patient can talk to AI all the time. It takes a huge burden out of us. So delivery of care with AI is already out there, and we use it. We use it very intensively. We use AI-based drug discovery, as we said, because we know how important it is for us to provide data better than the data banks in the past, because the current algorithms are mostly fueled by the biobanks and information from the past, which were with many gaps. They are not perfect. Luckily, generative AI can self-improve and self-correct, but still, we want to do it better. And last but not least, I think it's very important that we can now empower the patient to really collect the data by him or herself. So, and it's very helpful for us. So any doctor that is really into focusing on optimal personalized care is all about data. And right now we can do it in a very time efficient way, as we said, and it doesn't really cost that much. So luckily also the testings are dropping down in prices. Genetics has been on a very different price point before. Hopefully omics and other things will get to that as well. Robotics will help us a lot in that. And in terms of getting the last mile, really getting to people who do not have the access to at all care or even good care. Everybody wants to be in the city with the best hospitals, and medical tourism is based on that, and great and important, but it starts with the online accessibility to those people. So internet hospitals help a lot, and I think that's also one of the very important future points. Buildings fueled only with AI, where there's a maximum 1 MTA working, it's helping a lot already. And physician education. Physician education through AI and exchange with the best hospitals and those that are in the periphery to deliver the best care in that way.
Sure, and there's also a generational adaptation too, right? With the age of the doctor, can they adjust? Just very quickly, Ashish, before we go to the floor, because you run medical systems, is this going to boost the cost of healthcare eventually? And it's going to be a lot to absorb and the patient has to pay for it, or can it actually drive costs down? Can you do that? And then we'll go to the floor.
So from an infrastructure perspective, I think the cost is going down. I mean, in the last publication I read, GPT-4's development cost has even reduced 3x, tenfold. So we can see it's going down. So, but if you're it depends on how you look at it. Now, if you're running a hospital operations, if I can get the physicians to provide personalized medicine and see 20 more people who are walking in, it's beneficial for the patient and for the medical system. From a patient perspective, to what Elena had said, that how do we ensure that we prevent them and ensure that they remain healthy as opposed to coming to the hospital once they have a symptom. So I think it's just around the corner when we drive these solutions across. And it's all about awareness, and it's essential. That's one of the reasons we've partnered with the government, because we have to ensure it's transparent, we have to ensure it's inclusive, and we have to ensure that there are right policies supporting the clinical applications that are coming out of this initiative.
Good. Do you want a quick intervention, Elena? I see you nodding
Yeah,
there.
because we talk about cost and we talk about business case. Early data show that for every dollar that is invested, not spent, invested in Gen AI, there is a minimum of 3.5 that come back to that organization. I think we need to change the paradigm also of how we do the return on investment calculation, the business case and the economics, because we need to invest money to take waste out
Yeah,
of
that's a very good-
systems.
Right.
Right.
It delivers efficiency if you deploy correctly, right? Okay, let's go to the floor. We have a question here. We have a lot of. I'm not going to get to that many questions, so toss the box. Sorry.
Awesome.
And just be if you can. This is a pretty small room anyway, but direct your question to somebody on the panel so we can be efficient. Thanks.
Okay, so
Just make sure the question's quick. We're short on
yes.
time.
Okay,
Thanks.
so you mentioned trust, and that the problem is that people don't trust. But yesterday we heard Jan LeCun saying, as goes for generative AI and LLMs, that these systems cannot be trusted. And if I use something like ChatGPT, I also see that it makes up things. So I also see, like, how do you ensure that your systems are better? And the other thing is about also sharing my data. I see there is a big risk. Of course, it helps to have your genetic data analyzed, but how do you ensure, like, what are your practices to actually, you know, how is it shared? And we heard this, I mean, there was this one company that was also hacked. So basically everybody who did their genetic analysis, like, now it's on the web and it affects them, but also their family members, their children, like, yes, I think there is also a few technically unsolved issues. So it's hard a bit to, so I don't know, maybe Elena or Daniella? Or
Yeah, I was going to say, Ellen, it's interesting. Well, the cybersecurity is a huge issue, and they're having private meetings in Davos about it, because you have to have a very robust system because of the trust that you're bringing up earlier, Daniella. Go ahead.
Yes. First of all, to the heart of your question, the ChatGPT. I mean, we need to be using horses for courses, right? You would not use ChatGPT with genetic data. You need to go to the enterprise-grade version of this technology. I mean, like, you wouldn't use consumer technology for other purposes. So the corpus... Yes, what I'm saying is that the corpus of data that you point these systems to is very important. Second, hallucinations we've been able to reduce them with very specific techniques. RAG is an example. We go very deep technical. But so given where we are in that beginning, I think that the ability to reduce these type of, I would say, side effects has been incredible. The other point on cyber, we see that the security co-pilot actually is able to anticipate and reduce the time of handling some of these situations of about 68%, which is incredible, right? So it's not perfect, but it provides a huge amount of precision and speed and accuracy as an assistant to what we would do normally as mankind. And I think we need to look at it that way versus does it do it perfect today from the start?
Okay, very quickly, yeah.
I would just add one thing really quickly. This might be unpopular, but I got to throw it in. I do think we need smart policy, and we need harmonization of smart policy, because right now there's no real framework or roadmap. So I think the smart policy piece is essential.
Okay, very good. We have the box here.
At the Cube, so thank you for your very fascinating discussion. I was on a panel yesterday about regulatory impacts on business and society. So my question is, one, what kind of impacts do you see in terms of regulation, as they are different regions and different stages of maturity, et cetera? And then...
There's a mic there too. Yeah, we hear you, but...
and then also a few thoughts on...
he's got it. We understand him. It's
a few thoughts on potential liabilities. Thank you.
Good. Who wants to address that? the regulatory framework. Ashish, you want to jump in, and Daniella quickly?
No, so absolutely. I think it's essential, and following up what Danielle mentioned, I think it's essential to work with the government to ensure that we have the right policies. And since we are touching patients' lives, I agree. We have to have policies, and it's a journey. Now, just want to follow up on one of the other question that touches upon this. How do we ensure that we have doctors in the system and we spit out results? How do we ensure that we can reference it back to the literature that we're pulling it? So it's not hallucination. Our articles are referenced. So when we come out and say this could be A, B, C, or D, it's a reference to that article. So the doctors are happy with that. From a patient perspective, eventually it's an awareness. It's in your hands. You are eventually the decision maker. It's like every other technology. You can use it for the good, you can use it for the bad, but you are in control here. But 100%, it's a journey, and the regulatory landscape is improving. The UN just announced a body for monitoring and ensuring that it's transparent, ethical. You talk about pharmaceutical drugs. Most of the clinical trials were done in a different population, and yet we're all trying it out because we have faith. But now, how do we ensure that this data set is inclusive? I want to quote Abu Dhabi because we are residents of close to 225 nationalities. Here, we have a data set that supports, hopefully, we can have solutions to the world.
Great. We can't downplay the cybersecurity. If you track what's going on today, the healthcare systems are pretty prime targets, so the investment on the back end of that is important. Final question. Just very quickly, please. If you can direct it to somebody, be very good.
Yeah, so I'll keep it short. I'm not a plant. I want to thank M42 because we're actually on the ground and building use cases. So we're doing around 1 million medical records a month in the US and in the UAE. So this is not fake. This is real stuff that we're doing every single day on the ground with physicians. But what I want to ask is, as we're in these facilities in the US and the UAE, there's a tyranny of use cases. There's so many things that we can handle. And we're on there with the physicians every single day, and they say, can you do this? And can you do that? Can you do this? But there's limited resources. How do you rank these use cases, and what's the focus in the next 1 or 2 years?
So maybe I'll talk on behalf of Elena also. I mean, Microsoft and M42, we are working on those use cases in our facilities, and we have this prioritization metrics. One, from a patient clinical outcome improvement. Second, as she had mentioned, the wastage of costs. How do we optimize to ensure? So our use cases are prioritized predominantly on improving patient outcomes, and second, on the cost optimization so that we can leverage that cost on the infrastructure to improve the clinical outcomes. So there's a great prioritization metrics, which potentially maybe offline we can have a discussion on that.
Elena, final word, and then we'll wrap it up. Yeah, thanks. I have that little sign telling me the time is up. So
I think imagine the time that it takes to set up trusted research collaboration that lead to the discovery of new indications and targets. Right? Just if you can do a platform like the one that we're bringing together to make sure that the governance, the privacy, the security is done faster, you massively accelerate just the time to early the research. And Daniella mentioned, quantum in the future. We have launched a quantum elements copilot available for every chemist today. So the speed of time and the impact is in the hundreds-fold right now. And with that, I think there's a lot of optimism.
Good. Okay, good place to finish it. I'm sorry we can't take more and more questions, but we have to close it out. Our organizers, like John, do not ask another question. Evelyn, nice to see you. Ashish, always a pleasure. Thanks a lot, Daniella. I hope the AI can do something to that knee dislocation. And Ellen, it's always a pleasure. I have 2 daughters. I was saying in the green room, if you want to see girl power at play here, it's really nice to see it in the healthcare sector. Nice round of applause. Thanks very much.